480 BCE, a continent holds its breath. Two worlds are supposed to be clear, East and West, empire and freedom, despotism and democracy. That is the assumption. But on the shores of the Aegean, something unexpected happens. The empire that seems too large to fail is forced to learn, adapt, and change in order to keep expanding. This is not a story of a small heroic resistance defeating a giant. It is the story of how that giant absorbed the shock, reorganized itself, and continued to reach outward. Because the Persian Wars were not just a clash, they were a test of how far an empire could stretch before the world pushed back. Welcome to the channel. Here, we look at history not as a list of battles or personalities, but as systems, as choices, structures, and pressures that shaped what people believed was possible. Today, we follow one of the greatest empires ever built, and the moment when expansion stopped being simple. Most people think the Persian Wars are about Greece resisting Persia, but this isn't just about Greece. It's about something larger. Why the Persian Empire, after conquering half the known world, still believed its expansion was incomplete, and why it refused to stop, even when resistance grew. It is about what it takes for a state to keep growing and what happens when the world starts saying no. The question is not why did Persia attack Greece? The question is, why did expansion become the empire's default setting, and what would happen if it ever stopped? To understand this, we have to go back before the famous names, before Marathon, before Thermopylae. We begin with a system. In the 6th century BCE, the Near East was a map of competing kingdoms. Old powers, Babylon, Lydia, Egypt, were heavy, wealthy, and slow. Their rule was built on tradition. Into this world stepped something different. The Persians under Cyrus the Great built an empire that did not simply conquer territory. It built administration, satrapies, provincial governors, standardized taxation, a royal road system linking thousands of kilometers, a habit of absorbing local elites instead of destroying them. The empire expanded because it could. But more importantly, it expanded because its structure rewarded expansion. Territory meant revenue. Revenue meant armies. Armies meant stability, or at least the appearance of it. The empire became a machine built for outward motion. Cyrus conquered Lydia and Babylon. Cambyses reached Egypt. Darius reorganized everything from coinage to canals, binding together lands from the Indus Valley to the Mediterranean. Persia did not just grow geographically, it grew administratively. And once a machine like that is built, stopping becomes dangerous. Stopping means pressure builds inside. The turning point came in the west. The coastline of Asia Minor, today's Turkey, was dotted with Greek cities. They were wealthy, independent, proud of their traditions. When Persia extended its authority over them, it did not immediately crush their identity. It simply added them to the system. But systems create expectations. Local elites cooperated. Tribute flowed. Armies were supplied. Until it didn't. In 499 BCE, the Ionian Revolt erupted. Greek cities on the coast rose against Persian control. They were supported, cautiously and partially, by mainland Greek powers. Persia suppressed the revolt. It took time, it took resources, it required naval power and discipline. But the revolt did something more significant than burned cities. It shifted perspective in the Persian court. Rebellion in the periphery sent a message. External borders are not just lines on maps, they are pressure points. Darius did not simply want revenge, he wanted insurance. The decision to launch campaigns into mainland Greece was not impulsive. Persian rulers were not reckless conquerors charging toward glory. They were managers of an expanding system trying to solve problems. Forward pressure was the solution. If rebellious cities could look across the sea and imagine help, remove the source of help. If instability grew in the west, stabilize it by pulling Greece into the imperial network. It was not hatred, it was geometry. Expansion reduced the length of exposed frontier. Every new satrapy absorbed potential threat, and so the empire moved. The first great collision came at Marathon. A small Athenian-led force defeated a Persian expedition. In popular narratives, this is portrayed as a miracle. The few against the many. But step back. For Persia, Marathon was not a decisive disaster. It was an operational failure within a vast structure that continued to function. Roads still worked. Tax still flowed. Armies still marched. The empire did not collapse. It learned. Discipline meant patience. Systems meant redundancy. Power meant time. When Xerxes came to power, the decision to return to Greece was not emotional, it was administrative. One more campaign in a list of many, but this one would force the world to watch. 480 BCE. The Persian army crossed the Hellespont on engineered bridges. It marched with supplies and systems supporting it from behind. It was not simply a mass of soldiers. It was the front edge of a logistical network stretching back through Anatolia, Mesopotamia, and Iran. This is what empire looks like when it is confident. Greek resistance formed in alliances that were fragile, improvised, and often divided. Cities argued about leadership, duty, and risk. Some collaborated with Persia, some fought. Thermopylae, the narrow pass, is usually remembered for the last stand of Sparta, but look at it differently. From Persia's view, Thermopylae was a delay, not a barrier. The army continued south, it burned Athens, it pressed forward. The real problem was not bravery in a mountain pass, it was water. Persian expansion relied on coordinated land and naval forces. The fleet was the moving supply line and the hammer meant to break Greek resistance from the sea. At Salamis, that fleet met Greece's strength, not raw courage, calculation. Greek commanders studied currents, channels, and confusion. They drew the larger Persian fleet into narrow waters and reshaped the battle into something its numbers could not easily exploit. Persia did not lose because it was weak. It lost because its scale became a disadvantage in the wrong environment. After Salamis, after Plataea, Persia did not cease to exist. It did not shatter. The empire remained the largest political structure in the world, but something important changed. The assumption that expansion would continue, unchallenged, was broken. The Persian Wars did not end Persian power. They ended its perception of inevitable outward motion into Europe. Persia adjusted, turned its focus inward and eastward. It strengthened administration, managed revolts, guarded trade routes, and maintained the satrapal system. Expansion slowed because the cost of pushing farther west no longer justified the gain. This is not the story of an empire defeated. It is the story of an empire reaching the edge of what its systems could handle. The consequences were vast. For Greece, the wars created a sense of shared identity that had barely existed before. Rival cities discovered that they could act together when threatened. A new confidence emerged, and with it, new ambitions. For Persia, the lesson was structural. Even the best systems have limits. Logistics, communication, loyalty, and geography all impose boundaries that ideology alone cannot cross. For the wider world, something else became clear. History is not shaped only by the will of rulers. It is shaped by the interaction between systems. Empires expand as long as their structures can sustain forward motion. When resistance, terrain, and cost align against them, expansion stops, not with a dramatic collapse, but with adjustment. The Persian Wars are remembered as dramatic battles, but their real importance lies in revealing how far a complex state can reach before the world pushes back. The Persian Empire did not fall in Greece. It simply discovered where the edge was. It remained powerful for generations. Its roads stayed open. Its administration survived. Its influence stretched far beyond any battlefield. But a question lingered in the air of the ancient world. How large can any empire become before it must change the way it thinks? That question did not end in antiquity. It is still with us. If you enjoyed this exploration of systems, choices, and consequences, tell me, which moment in history should we study next? Which empire's turning point should we examine? Like the video if you found it thought-provoking. Subscribe if you want more stories told slowly, carefully, and seriously. Because history is not just about what happened. It is about what almost happened and why.